Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mindsync Hub with me, Amira.
And me, Caroline. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you. In today's episode, we've got a Q&A. Some questions will be to Caroline to actually help us to understand a little bit about living as a mum and looking after son with ADHD and autism, which we're hoping is going to be empowering and helpful to all mums out there, and also parents of neurodivergent children. But also, we've actually, thank you so much, everyone, because we've received questions from you as well in relation to neurodiversity that we would like to also share in today's episode. So, Caroline, I've got some questions for you today.
Hey, I'll see if I can answer them.
Lovely. So the first question, Caroline, is I know you've talked about Riley. I'm sure some of the audience, they heard you talking about your son Riley and his diagnosis with ADHD and autism in a previous episode. I'm just wondering about your understanding after Riley's second diagnosis. How do you think your understanding changed after Riley's diagnosis? And also in terms of Riley's, sometimes I know you've mentioned he struggles with being spontaneous, and you kind of realize as a mom, that what's spontaneous for you as a mom is different to Riley. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, he was originally diagnosed quite young with the ADHD, the attention deficit hypersensitivity disorder. So, and kind of along with that came attention difficulties at school, lots of hyperactivity, so sort of struggling to focus on tasks at school and at home, and sensory difficulties as well. So he used to chew quite a lot. He had a chew buddy at school, and even now, he still has sensory difficulties to some extent. So yeah, that was something that we knew was related to the ADHD. And then the hyper focus as well. So kind of focusing on particular topics. So like Disney, he, for many years, he was like obsessed with Disney. And I know some of these kind of overlap with autism as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I guess, and also something to mention that when he did get his original diagnosis, it's always been kind of mentioned about him having medication.
Yeah.
Being medicated for ADHD to help him concentrate more at school. And to be honest, I've always resisted it. Part of that is because, I don't particularly like the idea of him being on medication, but also because he had quite a difficult start in life. And I don't know how that affected him sort of physiologically, very reticent to give him medication.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all about the ADHD, and then kind of fast forward sort of more recently, and then last year, as he was getting it was getting closer to finding new schools for him for secondary school or grammar school. And so I started looking around at different schools for him, and basically realised that maybe a specialist setting might be helpful for him. But unfortunately, that was quite a battle, which I'm sure lots of other parents face as well when their children have been diagnosed as neurodivergent. Yeah. And through me going through that process, I realised that I might need to kind of fight this so that I could get him into a specialist school. And that's what I did. And part of that was for me to get him assessed with an educational psychologist, and also to have an assessment for autism. And it's not something I'd ever thought about really. But I thought, well, I'll get the assessment done. And then it came back that he was diagnosed with autism as well. So, sort of that comorbid autism and ADHD. And I think I was a bit shocked, really, because I just wasn't expecting it. But then at the same time, it kind of made sense a bit with things like that hyper focus on a particular area where they're, kind of that's their focus. And it's difficult sometimes to get him to focus on anything else other than Disney. And also the sort of difficulties with social communication. Sometimes he struggles with that, with socializing with children. He can socialize at a superficial level, and he actually talks to lots of different children, and he loves meeting people, and he can do that on a very superficial level. But in terms of like sort of depth conversations and building relationships, that's really, really hard for him, and he doesn't always pick up on social cues. And I think that's related to autism. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock, which I've got my head around now.
And I know you've done an amazing job actually by seeking these additional sort of support and the educational specialist assessments, because as I know, and a lot of our viewers know, it's not an easy process to navigate that system. So hats off to you for being a quite brave mom and courageous mom, absolutely. I'm advocating for Riley. And I know sometimes things can be difficult because I know you've talked about also Riley struggling with sensory overload, which is very much linked into people when they
Yeah.
are in the autism spectrum
Mm.
disorder, and also with ADHD as well, the attention deficit hyperactive
Yeah.
sensitivity. I'm just wondering, Caroline, what sort of strategies do you think helped you to cope with Riley's sort of sensory overwhelm, especially when he gets that sensory love in public places like supermarkets, like in
Yeah.
schools and places like that?
Yeah, I mean it can be difficult because it's kind of unpredictable. So, for example, he had a hospital appointment the other week, and I was really worried because I thought he's just going to, probably get really anxious and might have a bit of a meltdown. But he didn't. He absolutely loved it because they were all making a fuss of him in the hospital, the nurses. He was socialising with everyone. So I thought, well, I predicted it was going to be a problem, and it wasn't. But then, if you go to a supermarket or something, he really struggles with that. And to be honest, he doesn't want to go, and then you have to kind of weigh up. Well, do I just kind of accept that I have to go to the supermarket when he's not around so that it doesn't distress him, or do I kind of persevere and take him to the supermarket? So I think in terms of strategies, what I notice is that he can get dysregulated quite quickly. So he really struggles to regulate his emotions, and when he's in that kind of mode, I've realised that there's no point me kind of talking to him in a rational way because he can't hear it. He can't hear it. He's dysregulated. His fight or flight's kicked in.
Yeah.
I know perhaps I shouldn't call it this, but I think somebody said it. I was working with a client once, and their brother had ADHD, and she said, "Oh yeah, we just call it his chimp mode."
Yes.
But it's quite a useful metaphor because when I think about chimp mode, it's like this chimp kind of getting really excitable and you can't really control them, and he does get like that. So and it can be for people, if you're out and people see that, it can be quite upsetting or distressing for people around. So I'm also mindful of that if it happens and we're out, what I tend to do is just take him somewhere quiet and just kind of sit down and just try and let him calm down. But I don't really say that much, to be honest. I might just kind of touch him because I find that physical touch can help calm him down. If it was a case of him, because he can also get dysregulated at home. So, for example, if the plans get changed, just an example might be getting a takeaway, and he's got in his mind it's not fish and chip day, it's I don't know, pizza takeaway day. And then I changed my mind and wanted fish and chips, then he might have a complete meltdown. So, and sometimes you forget. Sometimes you forget.
That changing routine, isn't it?
Yeah, and so if he gets dysregulated in the house, what I tend to do is actually leave him to go to his room. I leave him on his own. I don't talk to him because it's a safe space at home. His room is safe. And I kind of sit down and just give him that space to, gradually calm his nervous system down. And hopefully it will do it over time. And then, he can learn that he can regulate himself. So I guess I use different strategies really when we're at home.
And it sounds like you're learning along the way as well. You're learning with him. But one thing I quite like about you, Caroline, and your parenting, you seem to have lots of conversations sometimes as well with Riley. And it's interesting because sometimes I'm just wondering about Riley's perspective on autism. Do you feel his own perspective on autism helped you with your parenting in any way?
With his perspective on having autism.
And what is Riley's perspective on having
autism? I mean, I did. Yeah, no, it's funny you asked that question. It's a really good question, Amira, because, when I was thinking about this podcast, I thought, I really ought to speak to him about it and get his take on it and how he feels about it. And I did sit down quietly with him and I said, what's it like? What's it like to have autism? And he just looked at me and he said, it's really stressful, Mum. It's really stressful. And I felt like a lump in my throat, and I was nearly quite tearful. I thought, God, yeah, he said, it's really stressful. And I said, what's stressful about it? And, he said, sometimes it's stressful at school. Sometimes the other children make me feel stressed, even though he's at a specialist school where there's a smaller child to teacher ratio, a much smaller ratio. He said it can be stressful having a brother if I don't play the games that he wants to play. And then he worries so much about fire alarms at the supermarket, at school, because he's got sort of hypersensitive hearing. You know, the sound of it is magnified for him, whereas for us, you know, it wouldn't be anything with it. It would just be kind of like a signal that you need to leave the building or there's a test. But for him, he really struggles with it. So he's trying to predict whether, you know, where there are fire alarms and if they're going to go off. So you'll get a load of questions around that. So yes, I really felt for him when he said that, when he said it was really stressful.
Yes, yes. And it's a very interesting perspective, because I'm sure some of the viewers might think, well, how would a neurodivergent child, or adult equally, would be able to differentiate between how does it feel actually being a neurodivergent from neurotypical, or someone obviously with not on the spectrum of ASD or ADHD, because this is what they knew all throughout their lives, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, he you know, his brother hasn't been diagnosed with autism or ADHD, and it's clear to me that he doesn't have either. And I think it can be really hard for Riley. I think a lot of stuff he doesn't say, but I know he's thinking different things. But my other son has quite a big friendship group, and you know, the other day we were literally at the weekend, I got a knock on the door and there was two boys at the door saying, can Frankie come out and play, please? And I didn't even know who they were. And I said, no, he can't, sorry, because I didn't know who they were. I thought who are these two boys? I don't even know their mother. But, you know, it hurt me because I thought they didn't even ask for Riley. They just said, you know, can Frankie come out? And they know that he has a brother. And I just said, no. I said, they're both playing in the garden, but thank you very much.
That must be the signal then, isn't it? Because the signal from a young age, and especially if there are siblings there, and I think equally with parents, maybe from a young age, Riley was kind of trying to work out, you know, I'm getting stressed out easily, but mom doesn't get stressed out. Frankie, my brother, doesn't get stressed out. Dad doesn't get stressed out as well. So I must be different, isn't it? It's that kind of, yeah.
And he does now. He's getting older. He does say about it. He does say, in fact, he said to me the other day, he said, Mum, I've got special needs, haven't I, Mum? And I said, we don't really kind of say that. I said, but you know, you have got ADHD and autism, but you know, that's okay. And you have got really great qualities, and that's just, you know, how you are and who you are, and we love it. And you are special, but you know, Frankie's special to us too. So I guess I kind of tried to normalize it somehow. But yeah, it's quite hard to hear him say that. And then I thought, you know, that I've got special needs. And then I thought, I don't know if I've answered that question correctly or not, you know. So then I'm thinking, should I have said that? Should I have said something else? Because he's so direct, you know, and he just asks these questions and I don't always know what to say. I don't know what is the right answer. I think, yeah, he's definitely, he knows the difference between him and Frankie, and that Frankie has a wide friendship group and that he doesn't. And yeah, he doesn't speak about it, but I know he feels it, and I feel it obviously because I'm his mum, and I used to get really anxious about that. I used to get really upset if he didn't get invited to parties. I used to really feel for him and get really upset, and then I thought, but now I just kind of accept how things are. And if he does get a party invitation, then obviously we grab it. And they went to a party the other weekend, and they both went, and it was great. And
nice.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
No. This is really, really helpful to know. I'm sure for a lot of people out there, I think, you know, who have children with neurodivergent or equally family members, I think they could relate to this. And it's nice because even though we're touching on how Riley feels different and how his perspective of autism kind of looks like, I just couldn't help noticing always whenever we talk about Riley, you know, you always talk about how amazing memory he has and the brilliant and the tech skills Riley has. I'm just wondering as well, with his amazing memory and tech skills, Caroline, do you have any memories of like events or stories that you know just stayed with, or memories that stayed with you?
You know? I mean, I suppose, I mean, he can, I can't think of a particular example in terms of memory, but I know he can go back really far to, I don't know, 3 or 4 and just come out with a memory to me. And he'll say, oh, you remember when we went to so-and-so and the restaurant was called this and I was doing this and I've forgotten all about it. So he can recall things. He can remember what colour he was wearing. He can remember what he was eating and what I was saying to him and things like that, you know, things that I would never remember. I'm just thinking about on the technical side of things. Two things come to mind. Recently, we went to Wales and I was with my sister-in-law, and he managed to connect her phone to her watch app. And she said, oh my God, I've been trying to do that for ages. And he just kind of did it.
Yes,
So
very
that,
easily.
I think that was a positive.
Yes,
But then a more recent one that was maybe not so positive but was quite funny was that when he was in his, dare I call it, chimp mode, and the other day I think I told him to do something and he didn't want to do it, and he just went off on one.
Yes.
And he was like, I could see he was incandescent with rage that I'd asked him to do something. I could hear him kicking off, and I thought, let's just leave him to calm down. And I could hear him shouting at me, and he was saying about, I'm going to speak to your boss, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I thought, yeah, of course he is, of course he's not.
Yes.
And then a couple of days later,
I saying it as like, obviously when any, sort of, a kid is like angry,
they're angry,
and he's like just having
throw stuff like, he said, I'm gonna speak to your boss, I'm gonna do this and do that. And I thought, yeah, whatever.
Report to your mum, to your boss.
And then I got to work, I think it was 2 days later, in the NHS, and my supervisor sort of knocked on my door. She said, oh, can I just show you something funny on my phone? And I thought, it's a bit strange. Yeah, and then she played this little voice note, and it was Riley shouting at her could she please fire me? Could she get me fired?
So he asked your manager to fire you?
Because he didn't want me to go to work anymore. I couldn't believe it. I was so shocked. I didn't even know what to say, and she couldn't stop laughing.
How did he manage to get into your work system? This is brilliant. That shows
he must have used my phone when I wasn't looking and just cracked the code.
Yes, but that shows his highly tech skills.
Yeah. So, and they still talk about it now when I go in the staff room. They say, I remember when Riley did that and nearly got you fired. And then we sent him a message back of Alan Sugar on The Apprentice. But yeah, so he's very clever, more clever than I realised.
And he's got a great sense of humour as well.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to say then I was a bit naughty, because when I got home, I said to him, oh, by the way, you did get me fired. And he looked absolutely horrified. And he went, oh my God, I tried to delete the message.
Unless he went into panic mode.
Yeah. But anyway, I didn't get fired, so that's good.
Brilliant. No, this is a brilliant example. And thank you so much for sharing this with us, Caroline. This is really brilliant, I think. I think it gets me giggles whenever I remember it. And I just try and kind of think about your boss getting the message, could you get mum fired, please?
Yeah, can you fire my mum?
Excellent. Thank you.
And the worst thing was my yearly appraisal was due as well. So I thought, oh my God, I hope that doesn't influence that.
It doesn't go in there. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing your experience about parenting, Riley. Thank you. Could you also pass our thanks to Riley as well for agreeing to share his perspective as well here on the platform? We really appreciate that. So the first question is, hi, Caro and Amira. I'd love to know, how do you support a child with ADHD or autism when you and your partner don't always agree on parenting styles? That's actually a good question.
Yeah. It is a good question. It's quite a challenging question as well, because, I think both parents have to understand autism and be open to it, and to accept that a child with autism is going to respond differently to a child that doesn't have autism. And I guess what comes into it is your own parenting styles, but also how you were parented too. So, for example, my parents weren't particularly strict. They were quite sort of laid back and chilled out, but my husband's parents were stricter and more kind of organised. And I'm probably more laid back, I would say, and more open to just sort of going with the flow. Whereas my husband is more kind of structured, and we do sort of do it differently. I think we just have to kind of talk about it, really. Yeah. Sometimes after the event rather than when a situation is happening. If there's one of us with Riley, it's easier than if there's two of us, because then we're both going to naturally default into our parenting positions, and they're slightly different. Yeah. And so what could end up happening then is that you end up, sort of disagreeing as the thing is happening, which is not helpful at all. And it's just going to kind of increase the stress level for Riley. So I think it's more a case of reflecting on it afterwards and what worked and what didn't. But and it's difficult. I think you can't have like a set thing that you do almost. I think you just have to go with it at the time. and maybe just accept that if you're there with the other parent, with your partner, that if they're doing a certain thing, I've learned not to kind of interrupt or intervene, because that's just going to increase Riley's stress, and that's the last thing I want to be doing.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
sometimes I have to kind of bite my tongue and kind of just sit there and
Yes.
let my husband do it in his way, and vice versa. I think that helps. And you can't. Riley's not like me. He's not like my husband. He's not like his brother. So we can't. We have to respond to him as he is.
Yeah.
And you almost have to kind of put aside how you are and your personality and just go with Riley and do what's best for him and try and put yourself in Riley's shoes. I think that's important.
I think this is quite a really powerful one, putting yourself in Riley's shoes. But I think that really, really lovely way of looking at it, because Riley is unique. His needs are unique to him. So trying to put yourself in his shoes, I think definitely it would help him to regulate, help him to even feel validated as well, which is quite
important. I'm thinking it's really important not to. I feel it's really important not to criticise his behaviour, because he can't help it. No. He can't help when he kicks out or shouts and stuff. He can't help it. No. So it's important for him not to feel criticised, because sometimes he will, after it's happened and he's calmed down, his nervous system's regulated, then he often will apologise. Yes. And instead of saying, well, I should think you would apologise for that, then it'd be more, that's okay, that's all right, it's not a problem. Just sort of reinforcing that it's okay. Yes. Because I don't want him to feel guilty, and I don't want it to affect his self-esteem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite helpful to know. So thank you, Caroline. I think we've got another question from another viewer. So let me just read the question. This viewer is asking, what are some practical ways to help a neurodivergent child cope with unexpected changes, especially when life gets messy?
Yeah, it is really tricky. It's really tricky, because if things are usual, if the routine to school is usual and everything is in place, then that's fine, isn't it? Because he knows what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. But life's not like that, is it? There's always unexpected things that happen. I think it's just when things are unexpected, it's just kind of reassure him that everything's okay, that he's safe. I think that's important, and just trying to kind of be there for him, to support him. I'll like I was saying about physical touch, that's really important for him. Also, what's important is he likes to sort of carry a Mickey rucksack around. He's very sensitive to what he wears on his body, so it's important for him to have he's got a denim jacket and he loves to wear that, and he touches that, and that makes him feel safe. I know I've heard before that sometimes people use weighted blankets. I've not used one of those, but just kind of reassuring him with touch. I think just trying to do eye contact, just voice tone, I think is really important, just to have a really gentle voice tone, giving him a bit of space, letting him trying to process it, making sure that he's got kind of sensory things that he can have, whether that's a fidget toy, or for him it's a piece of cloth or his denim jacket or something like that. That makes him feel comforted.
Yeah, so I guess the real clear message we want to send out to the viewer who asked this question is helping the child to link it to, it's not always when we have messy things or changing, it means we're going to feel unsafe, not to actually early on get that sort of into the child. Life being messy or changes, it's not always going, you can still feel safe.
And we do say that. I think the only thing with him, he has got you can tell him this stuff, but it's like on the day when the situation happens, because he had, his short-term memory is not good. Like sometimes he'll forget what he's asked me like 5 minutes ago, and he'll ask me the same question. Yeah. But you know what? Sometimes when there is a change, he's okay with it. But yes, like you say, it is about kind of talking to him when he's calm, when he's not in a heightened state, about how, we have to kind of go with the flow. We have to, some things change, and that's just how life is.
Yes, yeah.
And so sometimes he doesn't kick off, and which is it's very random. I think you just have to be prepared for the unexpected, and
so for you as well as a parent to cope with the uncertainty of his responses as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because I can go out with him and make a prediction that he's going to kick off if we go here, there, or wherever we're going, and then he might not, and then there could be another thing where I think, oh, he'll be fine there, and then he kicks off. It's just, it can be really difficult to predict. And I think You know me, Amira, quite well. My personality is I'm quite spontaneous.
Yes.
I love spontaneity and just kind of thinking, hey, let's do this now and not give it that much thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Which can be really annoying, I know.
Can be
Because I just change my mind just kind of changes and I think, well, I did plan to do this, but actually I prefer to do this.
Yes.
I can't do that with Riley. I can't do that with him. I have to be more of a planner and stick to the plan, which is a struggle for me. So then I think, well, if I'm not with Riley, then I can do my go with the flow thing a bit more.
Yeah.
Or if I'm just out with Frankie, because Frankie will just go with the flow.
Yeah.
He won't care.
Yeah.
So, you need that balance. Otherwise, it just feels, that you're having to over-plan everything all the time. And nobody wants to do that, do they?
Yeah. It's you're right. It's needing that balance.
Yeah.
Completely, Carol. So we've got another question from another viewer. So the question is, can you be in a healthy relationship with someone who's neurodivergent? If you're not, what helps make it work? So
okay. When you say, do you mean like
adult relationship? So can you be in a healthy relationship with someone who's neurodivergent? If you're not, what helps make it work?
Yeah, I suppose I'm just thinking about clients that I've worked with. I mean, I don't know about you, Amira, but as a therapist, I seem to get quite a few neurodivergent clients.
Yeah.
And I have to say, all of the neurodivergent clients I've worked with have been absolutely lovely, because I think that's another thing to me that I found with kind of ADHD and autism, that, like Riley is so lovely.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
I think yes.
Yeah. And in fact, you're quite right, because I'm just going to help this viewer answering the question based on clients I've worked with, and some clients I'm still seeing. A lot of the time I find when the partner is neurodivergent and the other partner is neurotypical, it's actually strength for the relationship. I often hear clients, talk to me about how their partner likes the routine as part of obviously being neurodivergent, and they like sort of the structure and things. Whereas for them, because they already, before coming into the relationship, struggled with the routine, and they're kind of being a bit messy, and actually finding this balance works for the relationship, because they both equally support each other, again, with one of the partners being neurodivergent, and have that sensitivity in social interactions. Again, the other partner kind of sort of steps in and helps with that. So that balances the relationship as well. So I think overall, I would look at it as, it's maybe reframing how we look at it, because maybe this viewer, they were coming from a place of fear. So if we embrace it in terms of, how that can add and enhance the quality of the relationship, because we will both help each other there, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just thinking about, I'm quite impulsive. Somebody that's very routine based can help kind of balance me out.
Yes, absolutely.
Balance out the, impulsiveness. And
that's how relationships meant anyway.
Yeah.
Complement each other and
absolutely.
Each other.
Absolutely, definitely. I know it's, Riley is great fun. I mean, nobody makes me laugh like Riley. He's absolutely hilarious. Some of the things he comes out with, I mean, some of them are, inappropriate, because there's that lack of, he just can't filter stuff, so it just comes out. And, sometimes you think, oh my God, but then other times you're just like in tears of laughter.
Yeah.
So, I'm just trying to imagine Riley as a partner, but no, he's good fun, and he's very loyal. He's very supportive. It's just, absolutely, you can be in a relationship with someone who's neurodivergent if you're neurotypical. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you for those who've actually sent us the questions, and we do hope that we sort of help to answer or give you like a bit of different perspectives to things in any way. And I guess that's it from us today. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Carol, for sharing as well, and you and Riley.
Thank you. We
look forward to seeing you in a new episode. Take care, everyone.
Yeah.